Well, to look at me, you wouldn't think that I was responsible for the security for the British Isles, would you? Well, that's what they used to tell us. And I was only a kid, 18 to be precise. I did what the poster said, joined the Navy to see the world. I was born in Nottingham and made in the Navy. That's what they'd have you believe. I suppose it's partly true. I did see the world, and I did have my finger in the security pie. On my first trip to the West Indies, the made bit comes in several portions. The Navy made me a medic. Yes, me. The only medical things I knew were from my gran. Old wives' tales mostly. Things like putting hot poultices on, really hot. It was supposed to help the healing. The only thing I could see it helped was the screaming. In the Navy, we learned proper medical techniques. Mind you, the things I saw in the Navy, you probably wouldn't have come across in Civvy Street. How some of the lads managed to get into the states they got into, even I couldn't imagine. And the alibis they came up with were better than a murder suspect. The first one I remember was Sydney. He worked for the captain himself. He was really his steward, kept his cabin tidy, set up the captain's table, poured the drinks on special occasions. He was always smartly turned out. I was surprised when he said that he wanted to see me on a serious matter. I said, of course, I'll be in the mess at 1500 hours. I was really shocked when he grabbed my arm rather too firmly and hissed at me. I mean now. His grip was very persuasive, so I said, okay, come to the sick bay. Once inside, Sydney was insistent that the door was firmly closed. I began to ask what the problem was when he dropped his kecks, exposing a pleasingly large, hard penis. This, he said. In normal times, one might have answered that a large, hard penis wasn't really a problem, until I noticed that it was trapped at the base by a rather fine silver napkin ring, his ginger pubic hair curling over the edges. In my trade, you're taught not to show surprise or shock at the conditions exposed to you. On this occasion, I stifled my instant reaction to ask how he thought that anything so small would fit onto anything so big. While I extracted a pair of rubber gloves, I was going to ask him to sit down, but thought better of it. Instead, scrabbling for a remedy, I said, have you tried lubrication? I only had butter, he replied, which was probably the reason the silver was shining so brightly. Before resorting to my first remedy, I warned him that I should at least try the manual approach. Placing my gloved right hand around the silver adornment, I tried gently to turn and pull it. This caused an instant reaction from Sydney. I've tried that. It won't budge. Staring thoughtfully at the problem, I decided that I might need a psychological distraction at the same time as my proposed physical treatment. I automatically prescribed a large dose of painkillers. Reassuring Sydney of their multiple effect, I left Sydney for a while as I went to the galley for a bucket of ice. Naturally, the cooks wanted to know why I needed such a lot of ice, and I told them it was for an ankle sprain. As I entered the sick bay, I could see nothing had changed, and that Sydney was becoming more tense. To try to placate him, I said, don't worry, we'll soon get you out of this. Although I admitted to myself that I had no idea it would work. I got a stainless steel basin and placed it on a chair, then emptied quite a few ice cubes in it. Keeping some reassuring sounds going, I took down some thick medical books from the bookcase and made 2 stacks either side the chair, ready for Sydney to place 1 foot on each pile. This would allow him to lower himself in the basin. You would have thought that I was in the act of castrating him by the racket he kicked up. As his testicles touched the ice, he let out a scream. You could have heard it in Blighty. So then I broke the news that he must submerge his scrotum if it was to do any good. I then added more ice to cover the offending todger and silver adornment. Sydney, who was by now gripping my shoulders, began to burble explanations that I hadn't asked for. I'm Jewish, you see. I could hardly not notice. I've always felt that there was something missing, so I tried to find out what it was like. Ah! Certainly, the blood was beginning to drain from his face. I didn't know if any other part of him was suffering the same effect. He loudly declared that it was working and that his penis was beginning to deflate. So without thinking, I grabbed a jar of lubricating jelly and slapped a handful on his penis, trying to release the napkin ring as fast as possible. He grabbed my hand tightly and said, "For God's sake, don't do that. That's how it started." I could see that the ice treatment was beginning to work. As soon as his penis had returned to a manageable size, he slid the ring off, hopped off the basin, pulled his kecks up and said, "I've got to get back to set the napkin ring on the captain's table. The Admiral is coming to dinner tonight. Thanks." The tension relaxed. So I poured myself a tot of rum.